Hello, welcome to Story Circles. Most of the books and movies we love have good guys and bad guys. Stories from around the world have always dealt with the question of good versus evil. Here's an old European story about good old-fashioned moral character. At the end of it, you're going to have to figure out what happens to the bad guy. It's called The Two Brothers. I hope you enjoy it. Once there were two brothers who inherited a small fortune from their father. The elder brother's wealth grew, but he was known to be wicked and extremely unkind. The younger brother's reputation was exactly the opposite, and the people around said that he was an honest and helpful man. This brother had many children and found it difficult to maintain a comfortable life. At times, they could scarcely get bread to eat. One day, there was not even this in his house, so he went to his rich brother and asked him for a loaf of bread. No sooner had he made the request than his brother hurled insults at him. "Vagabond, I don't entertain beggars!" And the door was slammed shut in his face. After this brutal treatment, the unfortunate man did not know which way to turn. Famished and shivering in his old threadbare coat on that cold, blustery evening, he felt a terrible despair. He couldn't bear the thought of facing his children with empty hands. He turned instead towards the mountain forest. There, all he could find were a few wild pears, and though they set his teeth on edge, he had them for a meal. The chill blast of the east wind burnt his nose and pierced him through and through, and he yearned to feel warm again. In despair, he thought, "What's going to happen to me and my family? My own brother has driven me from his house. We're going to starve to death in this wretched cold." At the point of giving up, the man considered the mountain path before him. The mountain top was rumoured to be made of a crystalline rock. Someone had even once said that upon the peak of the mountain burnt an eternal fire. Although he had previously dismissed such talk as fanciful, he decided to go in search of that fire. With the greatest determination, he walked on, getting higher and higher, and eventually he reached the top. He was startled to find 12 men sitting at ease around a roaring fire. He paused for a moment, afraid that they would insult him and chase him away. But the warmth of the fire drew him closer. He stepped closer and closer until the 12 men had turned to look at him. He bowed and said, "Good people, please help me. I am too poor to feed my dear children. We don't even have a fire in our cottage." Their faces were kinder than he'd expected. He asked, "May I sit with you and warm myself?" The stranger closest to him said, "Please, come. You are welcome to join us." The man sat down, and he felt the chill begin to leave his thin body. He dared not speak because they were all so silent. Then he noticed that they changed their seats one after the other, so that each man passed round the fire and came back to his own place. At that moment, An old man with a long white beard arose from the flames. This mysterious figure spoke to the poor man. "You who have come here in despair, do not waste your life here. Return to your family, work, and live honestly." And having completed his utterance, the old man disappeared back into the flames. Then the 12 men filled a large sack with embers, put it on the poor man's shoulders, and advised him to hasten home. Full of gratitude, the poor man thanked them and set off. He walked with new energy, anxious to complete the journey before the embers died. Imagine his astonishment when he arrived home and found that the sack contained not embers, but pieces of gold, as many as there had been embers. He was filled with joy. He knew that he was no longer poor and that his family would never again worry about hunger or the cold. With all his heart, he thanked those who had been so kind to him. Curious to know just how much gold there was, he sent his wife to his brother's house to borrow his measuring scale. This time, the brother seemed to be in a better mood, and he lent it to her. But it was his nature to mock them, so he said, "What can beggars like you have to measure?" The wife replied, "Our neighbor owes us some wheat. We want to make sure they return the right quantity." The rich brother was puzzled. He suspected that the truth was being hidden from him. Unnoticed by his sister-in-law, he smeared some grease at the bottom of the scale and then handed it to her. The trick worked. When it was returned, stuck to the bottom was a piece of gold. He hurried over to his brother's house. "I know you have gold pieces. Have you become a thief? Whom did you rob? If you don't tell me, I'll report you to the justice of the peace." In distress, the poor man stopped to think. He dreaded offending his brother, and so with reluctance he told the story of his journey to the Crystal Mountain. The elder brother had plenty of money, yet he was envious of anyone else's good fortune. He became even more discontented when he saw that his brother was winning everyone's respect because of how he used his new prosperity. He decided that he too would visit the Crystal Mountain. "I'm bound to increase my worth," he said to himself. When he reached the summit, he found the 12 men seated around the fire, just as his brother had said. He addressed them. "Good people, it is bitterly cold, and I am a poor and homeless man. Please let me sit with you by the fire." The man closest to him responded, "My son, the hour of your birth was favorable. You are a rich man, but a miser. You are wicked, for you dare to lie to us. Come forward and stand here." Terrified, he followed the command. He dared not say a word. The 12 men changed their places one after the other, each at last returning to his own seat. The white-bearded old man arose from the flames and spoke sternly to the rich man. "Woe falls onto the willful. Your brother's behavior is good and moral, and he deserves his reward. But your behavior is neither right nor honest, and you cannot escape punishment." What happened next is not surprising, given that this all took place hundreds of years ago. The 12 men arose. The first seized the unfortunate man, pinched him and passed him on to the second. The second also pinched him and passed him on to the third, and so they all did in their turn, until he was given over to the old man. Days passed, then weeks and months, but the rich man never returned, and no one ever found out what had become of him. His brother did indeed have his suspicions, but thought it best not to say a word. If you enjoyed this video, please hit your subscribe button to get more stories for listening and reading.